lot of it, and of course the public will link it. Fantastic.
Well, and I hope, that they
It's the first night of the league.
write it in such a way that it doesn't quite sound as salacious as...
But we can't. I told Carlos, I said,
They didn't
take
write anything back then.
that date works for him, but he doesn't have a firm confirmation yet.
Good evening. Jenny Bushman, is she here? Okay. Al Thurley, on behalf of the city, Al will receive a gift that we have from Masato, I believe,
Correct.
right? Al?
Well, go ahead, Jenny.
Just a few words. I was fortunate enough to be an ambassador on this year's trip to Masato, and it was amazing. I can't say enough about that city and the country of Japan. I think it was an especially meaningful trip after the disaster that had happened the prior year. The people of Japan are amazing, and we're very, very, very grateful for all of Winona for the efforts that we made to help them during that difficult time. I was joined by 26 other ambassadors from Winona, and it was, like I said, a trip of a lifetime for everyone. So on the second or third day that we were there, we went to the community dinner, and the Mayor Sasaki presented this gift for the city of Winona. So I am here I accepted the gift on behalf of the city of Winona, and I'm here to present the city of Winona with that gift. So this is from the people of Masato.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny, and I accept this on behalf of the city, and I want to thank the Winona International Friendship Association for everything they do to strengthen the ties between Winona and our sister city of Masato, and this will have a prominent place in our Masato room here at City Hall. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Say, Al, while you're up, you want to say something about this weekend, I think, with the
Sure,
trees?
thanks. I'll give an opportunity anytime.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a significant event happening at 3 o'clock on Sunday, June 10th. Our friends in Japan, through the government of Japan, are presenting 20 sakura or cherry trees to the city for our planting and our remembrance of not only the relationship we have, but also the 100th anniversary of the donation of cherry trees by Japan to Washington, D.C. in 1912. So you're all invited to that ceremony at 3 o'clock, and it's significant. We'll have some lasting memories when those cherry trees begin to thrive. They'll also be planted at the middle school and at the high school as well. So thanks again. Hope you can make it.
Okay, thank you, Al. What was that?
Cell phone turn it off.
Cell phone, could you just turn your cell phones off, please? In my line of work, both for the city and as a private citizen, I get the opportunity to meet and discuss a lot of interesting things with a lot of interesting people, and I find that there are many people here in the city that got a really neat story to tell. And one of those people are George Stopa. I don't know, George worked for, I think he started out, he was working for construction companies, and back in 1980, or thereabouts, he was selected by Red Wing Shoes to be their poster boy. And he came up to me the other day and he said, you know, I was in Playboy. I said, you were in Playboy? And I said, well, prove it. So he brought me down the 1980 issue of Playboy, which was probably one of the best-selling ones of that time and probably of ever, because it was Bo Derek on there, and Bo Derek was a perfect 10. And sure enough, I opened it up, and there was a picture of George. And this, I didn't bring the Playboy, but this is a picture. He was selected, and this picture was actually on billboards throughout the United States and even in Europe. Anywhere that Red Wings shoes sold or had a store or whatever, they had a billboard with George's picture on it. So George made it. You know, he made history, and his face was all over the world. And I kind of thought that was a neat story, and I told George I was going to do that one night. And I decided with a packed house here tonight, this would be the right time to do it. So with that, Judy, what do you got?
I am very pleased to announce that we heard today that the City of Winona will be awarded $600,000 for our Central City Housing Rehab Program. We applied for this money, and we were notified today that we will be receiving it. We currently have a waiting list on our Central City program of over 75 homeowners, and we'll only be able to help about 25 of those. So this is an extension of our existing program, and will keep us going and operating for the next 2 years. So that was great news today. Thanks to Lucy and the community development staff for all your work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lucy. Okay, Monica, call the roll, please.
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Councilman Thurley.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Alexander. Here. Salyards. Worshakowski.
Here.
White. Here. The first item on tonight's agenda is the required public hearing. It's the appeal of a decision of the Board of Adjustment, the CUP for CD Corporation. The attorney will give us a summary of how we're going to proceed.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing, and I'll first call on City Attorney Chris Hood, and he'll kind of go through everything. One comment I would make is that we're all here. I ask everybody to respect everybody when they speak, whether you agree with what they're saying or you disagree. Please respect them. I would ask that the signs be kept to a minimum and maybe off to the side. And Chris will give an order of what we're doing, and then we'll move on. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight I'm going to speak from here because I've got a fair amount of paperwork on my desk that I'll need to go through, so I apologize for the somewhat lack of formality. The reason that you're here tonight is we have an appeal from a decision of the Board of Adjustment of the approval of a conditional use permit for CD Corporation to have a transportation facility to ship sand. The appeal is brought pursuant to Winona City Code Section 22.21G, and the staff report lays out an excerpt from that particular section of code for council and members of the public. The appeal has been filed by a group called Winona Area Citizens concerned about sand mining. The acronym is CASM, or CASM, so if you hear me say CASM tonight, that's what I'm referring to, CASM or the appellant. That group is, as I understand it, represented by Amy Gurnis, Mary Kaveshi, and I apologize if I'm not getting the last names correct, Alan Duquette, Dale Shower, James Johnson, and Jim Gurley. A procedural issue that we do need to address tonight with the appellant with respect to their letter appealing the decision of the Board of Adjustment, which is Exhibit A to the staff report, is to have CASM designate a specific person with an address for service of process. The letter that they submitted was unsigned and did not provide an address for purpose of service of process. So we do need them to designate a single person and an address. At the end of the council meeting, or at some point when the council decides to make a decision, the decision needs to be by order, and that order then needs to be served by mail upon the appellant. So whatever decision you decide to make, we need to serve that. So for the representatives of CASM here tonight, when you make your presentation, if you could designate that person for us for the city clerk and also state an address for purposes of service of process. The issue before the council tonight on appeal is whether the decision of the Board of Adjustments to approve a conditional use permit for CD Corporation on May 2nd, 2012 was in compliance with the applicable standards and criteria for a CUP contained in Winona City Code. And the specific code provision for transportation facilities used to ship sand is 43.63B, Clause 40, which is in the M2 General Manufacturing District. The packet this evening includes a number of exhibits. The first is the letter from CASM appealing the Board of Adjustment decision. Exhibit B is the original application from CD Corporation requesting the conditional use permit. Exhibit C are the minutes from the May 2nd Board of Adjustment meeting. Exhibit D is a copy of the Board of Adjustment's order, which is dated May 10th. Exhibit E is a copy of the Board of Adjustment resolution, which was approved on May 2nd, which is Board of Adjustment Resolution 12-10. And then finally, Exhibit F is a copy of City Ordinance 3894, which is the city's moratorium ordinance on frac sand facilities, which was approved in March of 2012. The suggested procedure for the appeal this evening, and on appeal, the matter is somewhat different than what is normally before you. Usually you're acting as a legislative body, and so you have a much wider discretion in that situation. Now you're acting as a quasi-judicial body, which means you are acting in a judge-like capacity, which means your discretion is limited to your applying your specific city code. And so from a discretion standpoint, your discretion is limited in your decision-making tonight, and I'll talk about that after we proceed and hear from the appellant and the respondent, Board of Adjustment and CD Corporation.
Can you put the mic closer, please, so we can hear that?
I can certainly try to do that. The procedure for tonight is what has been set out in the staff report. It was also put out on public notice. This appeal hearing was both published and also provided by mail to the appellants and those that were directly affected in the immediate area. The appeal procedure this evening, the mayor has obviously opened up the appeal hearing. I'm giving a few minutes of introductory comments on procedure. The suggestion is then to move to a very brief staff introduction, if staff still believes that's necessary after my introduction. If not, they can certainly dispense with that and defer to later in the proceeding. Then it would be to move to the appellant's presentation. I'm recommending 20 minutes for that particular purpose, where the appellant then gets to present whatever they would like to present to the City Council to show why the decision of the Board of Adjustment to approve the conditional use permit for CD Corporation on May 2nd should be overruled or amended. Following Chasm's presentation, then there would be an opportunity for other interested parties to present their position on the particular topic tonight. I'm suggesting that given the 20-minute presentation for Chasm, that be limited to 10 minutes, but obviously that is in the discretion of the council. Then the Board of Adjustment staff representative would present the board's position with respect to the approved conditional use permit and whether that was in compliance with the standards and criteria contained in city code for 15 minutes. Then CD Corporation would have an opportunity to be heard if they chose to avail themselves of that opportunity for 5 minutes. At that point, the mayor would close the public hearing and the record. I would then like a few more minutes to go over some additional procedural or legal issues, and then at that point in time, council would then deliberate. I am recommending that council reserve all of their questions or comments until all of the evidence and testimony is received. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks.
Okay, Carlos, you want to say anything now or defer till later?
Later.
For later. Okay, at this time, I would ask the appellants, the concerned citizens, to come up and start the presentation.
We intend to show that it is premature to issue this permit before our moratorium study is completed and all changes in place. We are asking council to honor the moratorium study process and to deny this permit until that study is completed. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and present our case. However, we question the legality of the format for today's meeting, as City Code Chapter 22.21G states that the appellant and a representative of the board shall have equal time to speak. Scheduling city staff and CD Corps is not in code. City staff provided background and CD made their case at the time of the application. In addition, constituents were not allowed to meet with elected officials. We want our boards and council to do the right thing and not let quasi-legal fears of being sued be a distraction from the importance of protecting our health, safety, and welfare. Today we have 4 speakers. I'm speaking on traffic safety and bridge concerns. James Johnson will speak on the moratorium. Kim Sharp will address the hazards of silica sand. And Mike Kennedy will address the effects on quality of life. Traffic impact and bridge safety. On March 19th, just prior to their approval of the moratorium, our city manager told City Council that the port would handle a maximum of 150 barges per season. This permit plans an expansion to a total of 192. That's 182 additional frac sand barges per season, compared with just 10 last year. This will be 120 new sand truck trips per day in and out of our city in addition to current traffic. Over a 12-hour day, this will be 1 new truck trip every 6 minutes. Here's the math. 60 truckloads per barge times 182 barges equals 10,982 truckloads, times 2 for round trip equals 21,840 truck trips per season. Loaded or empty, an additional truck will travel on our streets and bridge every 6 minutes with this expansion. The route has difficult intersections for semi-trucks at the bridge, onto 4th Street, onto Huff, and off Riverview Drive, turning into the port. None of these intersections have adequate room for turns. Picture 21,840 sand trucks waiting to turn, then turning wide across other lanes to complete the turn. Each of these, the wait and then the wide turn, creates hazards for cars, cyclists, pedestrians, and other trucks. Tourism would be impacted if entry to the Minnesota Marine Art Museum is blocked. I have seen as many as 5 trucks stopped on the bridge and 4 trucks on the 1 block of 4th Street. That's with current traffic volumes, before adding 1 truck every 6 minutes. No mention has been made for payment of road upgrades, repaving, adding lanes, etc. The county has implemented a road use fee so that citizens do not subsidize business. Again, this is an area for study under the moratorium. The mapped route is hazardous for families and children at the YMCA since it travels through this vulnerable pedestrian and drop-off neighborhood. In addition to the mapped route, a CD representative stated at the Board of Adjustment meeting that, quote, if sand is washed, it comes from Hemker's operation on Old Goodview Road, end quote. This new route is absent from the application. The permit was passed with incomplete information and should be denied. All traffic routes and volumes need to be considered in a traffic impact study. The bridge has its own set of problems. MnDOT has no valid data on overweight trucks. As they acknowledge, the weight pad has been frequently miscalibrated. We know trucks also drive on the shoulder to avoid being weighed by the pad. According to Dave Kramer, the county road engineer, 1 truck has the road impact of 9,600 cars. 1 truck overloaded by 20% has the exponential impact of 19,000 cars. This is on our bridge that was closed in 2008 with serious economic and personal travel impact for its 11,600 daily users. That's MnDOT figures. We want the city to have a plan to protect our commuters and truckers. MnDOT cannot assure us. They said the I-35 bridge was safe. We need our own study, again, the very purpose of the moratorium. Recommendations. We recommend that a traffic impact study be done. The county has specific requirements for all applications under a traffic impact study. We recommend a bridge impact study be done to assess safety with these new traffic loads. In summary, City Council wisely enacted a 1-year moratorium to address these serious safety concerns. We ask that the Council honor the study process of the moratorium and deny this permit until the study is completed with any new ordinances in place.
I'm James Johnson. I live at 802 West Broadway. On May 2nd, the Board of Adjustment approved this expansion of frac sand at the commercial dock. At the hearing, many citizens, including myself, raised the concern that this expansion violated the express purpose of the city's one-year moratorium on frac sand, and we questioned the commercial dock's exemption from the moratorium. Some members of the board shared our concerns and asked about the exemption. They were told by our planning staff that they could not discuss the port's exemption and could only discuss the specifics of the CUP. They were told that the port was legally exempted from the moratorium. Yet to this day, staff and council have not explained the legality of exempting the commercial dock from the city's interim ordinance. According to Minnesota Statute 412.191, quote, prior to the publication of the title and summary of any ordinance, the City Council shall approve the text of the summary and determine that it clearly informs the public of the intent and effect of the ordinance, end quote. Yet nowhere in the published summary of the moratorium is there mention of the intent or effect of the exemption of the commercial harbor, which is a major part of the moratorium. The moratorium states, quote, the public interest and public health, safety, and welfare require that the city study, analyze, and evaluate the impacts and effects of existing, new, or expanded frac sand mining, storage, transportation, washing, drying, and processing operations for the purpose of determining the adequacy and effectiveness of existing ordinances and regulations, end quote. The document admits that city staff, quote, has not fully researched, analyzed, and studied the impacts of such uses, and that current regulations and official controls of the city may not adequately address the negative impact and effects of frac sand operations and transportation facilities, end quote. The City Council created the moratorium because there are serious questions about the consequences of frac sand operations within the city, but by exempting the port from the moratorium, the City Council effectively negated the express purpose of its own moratorium, to evaluate the potential effects of new and existing frac sand facilities on the public's health, safety, and welfare. The explanation given in March for the port's exemption by our city manager and city attorney was that the dock was considered an existing operation that had moved sand in 2011. This answer does not explain at all why the port should be exempt from a moratorium that specifically halts the expansion of current facilities. No other existing frac sand operation was exempted from the moratorium. Another explanation was given just last week. Our Director of Economic Development stated that the city did not want to close the third largest port in the state to miners and did not want to disrupt the move to the newly constructed commercial dock. But the moratorium does not close our port to frac sand. The intention is just to prevent expansion. The moratorium only concerns frac sand. In no way does it appear it would affect the other commodities that are shipped through the commercial dock. One last point is that we question the city's decision to exempt the port because it appears to be a conflict of interest. The Port Authority serves as the economic development arm of the city of Winona. The city has a stake in activity at the port, but is also charged with regulating the frac sand industry and studying concerns to the health and well-being of Winona citizens. We question how the city can do both, especially since the Port Authority profits from the frac sand industry, making 28 cents a ton for all commodities that pass through the commercial dock. Furthermore, 2 members of the City Council serve as commissioners on the Port Authority, and our city manager is part of the Port Authority staff. The purpose of this appeal of the board's decision is to hold you accountable to the promise you made to concerned citizens in Winona that you would take the necessary time to study the impacts of this industry on Winona and not to allow expansion of mining, processing, or transportation facilities during the city's one-year moratorium. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me come talk about crystalline silicon today. I appreciate the conditions incorporated by city staff concerning dust and dust control. The health of CD Corp's employees and city residents should be of great concern to our city staff and elected officials. The city wisely put a one-year moratorium in place so more research could be done and the appropriate conditions would be included in CPUs to ensure public safety. This work is just beginning. Let's not circumvent this activity by jumping ahead with this commercial dock. lung cancer, crystalline silicon is classified as a human carcinogen by a number of agencies. In the handout, I listed at least 5 national organizations. There are non-cancer health effects as well, including a wide variety of adverse health effects on lungs and other organs, including the neurological and reproductive systems. Silicosis, a non-cancer disease, is a chronic, progressive, inflammatory, and lung-scarring disease. This disease is incurable and can progress even after exposure stops. The main health concerns from silica focus on particles that are small enough to get into the deepest part of the lung where gas exchange occurs. The respiratory size fraction is defined as particles that are less than 5 microns in size and are typically too small to be seen by the naked eye. Deep inside the lung is where the most critical toxic effects of crystalline silicon occur, resulting in silicosis and cancer. In addition, the particles can move around to other organs in the body. Some particles are removed from the lung into the lymphatic system. From the lymphatic system, the silicon particles can move to the skin, kidney, liver, blood, and other organs. With this new industry, we are seeing a number of states establishing health thresholds to mitigate human health risks. The following states have adopted these long-term ambient air exposures levels, thresholds for silicosis. California, New Jersey, and the EPA has 3 micrograms per cubic meter. Texas has 2 micrograms. Vermont has 0.12, and New York has 0.06 for thresholds. Winona County has adopted 3 micrograms for air quality monitoring, as you can see in condition 5. I don't think anyone disagrees that crystalline silicon has been in our environment for years. However, a freshly fractured crystalline silicon, such as that emitted during mining and processing, is significantly more toxic than weathered silicon found in agricultural uses. What we are now seeing is a change in our exposure levels and concentration due to the mining, transportation, processing, and shipping of thousands of tons of this known carcinogen 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. through Winona. I stand before you not with answers, but with questions. What is the risk? Why are we not measuring and monitoring the dust? What is the best equipment and process to use for measuring? There are a number of air monitoring ports available, but we need to apply due diligence to understand their validity, such as measuring techniques and distance from the source. If some believe there is no risk, then requiring measurements be done by an independent lab should not be an issue. If the high-risk small particles of silicon are difficult to see, how can a dust control plan rely on actions based on visible sand? Vehicles in the lot at Chrysler Corner were covered with dust, even though the sand trucks were covered. How many small, lighter particles were airborne? The moratorium was established to give local government time to learn more, research and answer these questions, work with the state and federal agency, and approach this industry with the appropriate controls. I ask you let the moratorium serve its purpose. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak. My name is Mike Kennedy. I'm a local business owner, and I am the president of the local Isaac Walton League chapter. I want to focus my comments on quality of life issues that the Will Dill chapter of the Isaac Walton League of America, located here in Winona since 1923, feels should be part of these discussions. The obvious traffic, air and water pollution, and safety concerns are of equal burden on the public, but they are easier to see. The quality of life issues that I am highlighting can be slower to develop and more insidious in the lives of all of us. Last month, North Dakota surpassed Alaska in the production of crude oil, second only to Texas. On my recent week-long research trip to northwest North Dakota and northeast Montana to visit oil well sites, friends' land, and several fast-growing boom cities such as Bowman, Dickinson, and Williston, which is northwest North Dakota, and Sidney, Culbertson, and Freud, Montana, all these cities near the center of the fracking boom. I met and talked with several lifelong residents that, quote, wish the oil and gas boom and its hydraulic fracturing and the out-of-state experts, sound familiar, had never come to their town. The short-term economic benefit has turned into a nightmare of increased housing costs, ownership and rental, increased maintenance and expansion needs of all public service, utilities, and roadway costs, the constant worry about their precious water wells and the unnamed chemicals used in fracturing processes. Their wells in North Dakota are extremely sensitive to them. The unbelievable and unsafe volume of heavy truck traffic, the unbelievably high cost of labor, and the hard-to-get contractors in their local towns. Add to that the significant increase in crimes such as robbery, assault, rape, theft, prostitution, and drug use. There seemed to be no end to the bad news and little, if any, good news. Many people have pulled up lifelong routes and left. Many more are considering moving out of the area strictly for their sanity, but have very few options to act on. On top of all this stress and the experience of such dramatic change in their lifestyles, there is a large influx of migrant workers and the many man camps that appear in and around these cities that have historically valued their open range and big sky appeal of few people and a lot of space for them to live in. Sadly, there was little trust in public authority to do the right thing, especially in dealing with law enforcement, land purchase, mineral rights, or deciding who was going to pay for all the infrastructure needs, mainly for the benefit of the oil industry. Bottom line, very few of the locals that I met were satisfied with their lives in general, and it was not due to their income. It was due to their quality of life and their state of mind. There was erosion of families, friendships, and social interactions. There were few, if any, aspirations for a better future. It was suggested by our friends that for our own safety, we stay out of Williston, North Dakota. This is not Winona now. But the parallels are obvious, and it's a slippery slope. I pray for all of us that we recognize how good our quality of life is in this beautiful community. We do not want that to be a memory. I have also been on the Visit Winona board for many years and know that surveys taken of tourists say their top reason for visiting or returning to Winona is the natural beauty and the overall quality of life. I love Winona, and I don't want to live anywhere else. Much more needs to be studied, and safeguards must be put in place to provide for the health, safety, and general welfare of Winona citizens before frac sand shipping is increased at the commercial dock. The cup should be denied, and the study ordered by the moratorium should be completed, and recommendations from the study considered and enacted by the City Council. Thank you.
All right, is that it from the appellants? Okay. Then we'll open it up. Anyone else who wants to speak, just keep it short and try not to repeat what was already said.
My name is Reggie McLeod, and I live on 267 East Sanborn Street. And I had a couple points I wanted to make. One was I think there's broad perception that making an exception to the moratorium for the harbor really just isn't fair. I think it's a question of fairness, and the problems that could arise from the business and the trucks and processing applied to the port as well as any other facility. The only difference is the port was not built exclusively to handle frac sand, as it was pointed out earlier. It will handle other commodities. Another point, and maybe someone can answer this question, it appeared that there was a spill of frac sand on 4th Street today, and there was a city street sweeper up there cleaning it up. Does anyone know if that was the case? That's sure what it looked like. No? Curious. But I think that happened this afternoon, but it would be interesting to find out. My other point is because I'm editor of Big River Magazine, I've been involved with bridge issues a lot. And I think the Winona Bridge and the wear and tear on it should be a major concern. And I hope the city has in its hands by now an engineering study that specifies how much traffic the bridge can stand, because anyone who works with metals at all knows that the amount of stress that's put on those metals determines the lifetime and when they're going to wear out. This is a fracture-critical bridge where one crack in a steel girder could bring the whole bridge down very quickly. Right now, the DOT is came out with a report 2 weeks ago, they're considering 3 alternatives for fixing the bridge. They're not even talking about building a new bridge. All of the 3 alternatives that they're considering involve closing the bridge, taking large sections of it apart, and reassembling it. I hope that the City Council and the city staff is familiar with this. It's all available on the web. And I think you guys should have a very thorough grasp of what's going on with the bridge before you make a decision to increase the traffic on it. You should know exactly how many of these trucks are going to be able to go over the bridge before it has to be closed, before it might be damaged. So, thank you.
Okay, who's next?
Alan Doucette, 402 Pleasant Hill Drive. Oh, this one. All righty. And which one's live here? Alan Doucette, 402 Pleasant Hill Drive, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. The lease agreement between CD Corp and the Port Authority stipulates that CD Corp will pay $9,167 per month and a 28 cents per ton shipping fee. Based on the 192 barges anticipated to be shipped this season, the Port Authority will realize an income of $239,000 for this year, if my figures are correct on that. Unfortunately, Winona taxpayers will receive no financial benefit from this expansion, as these monies will not go to the city's general fund. Half of the additional semis traveling on Winona streets to the CD Corporation will be loaded with frac sand. And as you heard before, what the ratio is from one truck, 2 cars. The wear and tear on the streets will be equivalent to 104,832,000 additional cars. At this time, there's no agreement that the Port Authority or CD Corp will be responsible for maintaining and repairing our streets damaged by this huge influx of trucks. These costs will fall upon Winona taxpayers, who will still have to deal on a daily basis with the congestion, safety issues, dust, and noise from these trucks. Many people have presented in the past and this evening the cons of this issue. I would like to know what the pros are in this issue for the Winona taxpayers. I've heard none. For these reasons, the Council should overturn the CUP granted by the Board of Adjustment for the expansion pending a complete study during the term of the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Miller, council members, my name is Larry Labor and I manage the CHS grain elevator and barge loading facility located in the commercial harbor. We've been operating in that location since 1976. I wanted to give you a perspective from someone who operates a business in the commercial harbor. We handle grains and grain products such as corn, soybeans, soybean meal, and DDGs. We sit between the 2 properties that CD Corporation operates. We have been business neighbors since CHS came into the harbor. Our trucks and their trucks intertwining on a daily basis. We've seen a number of products move in and out of the harbor. The various grains, the DDGs, cottonseed meal, coal, fertilizer, pig iron, as well as the sand. We operate a dusty business. Lots of field dust comes in with the grain. You see the dust from other products handled in the harbor as well. One of our main concerns is our employees' health and safety. So when we handle a new or different commodity, or we see our neighbors doing so, we look at the health and safety aspect. This is not something we take lightly. When we saw the first sand being loaded out on barges, we consulted our MSDS book. We found that sand was almost benign as long as it wasn't processed, ground up, causing the dust. This is the sand that we have in our kids' sandboxes or in the sand bunkers on our golf course. It's the sand used to form the base for many of our buildings here in town. As an island city, we are surrounded by sand. We have found that sand in its raw form created little or no dust, especially compared to the commodities we already handle. Since our existence, we have seen very large amounts of sand in the harbor in the form of dredgings from the river that the Corps of Engineers stacks every year. To date, this has not caused any health or safety problems, yet we see literally hundreds of thousands of tons every year, nor do we anticipate any health problems. Our business comes to us almost exclusively by truck. Every business day, Monday through Friday, during the navigation season, we handle anywhere from 100 to 250 trucks a day. Our competition across the street is handling the same volumes every day. Then there are the other products, the fertilizer, the coal, and such that add to these numbers. We believe adding more sand trucks to the mix will go almost unnoticed with the large numbers that are already coming through the port. Back in 2004, the harbor saw over 79,000 trucks. In 2010, the number was only 68,000 trucks. Our transportation infrastructure handles these volumes very well, with the exception of the interstate bridge. After seeing the preliminary plans online, I have no doubt that these afternoon gridlock problems brought on by a 75-year-old design will eliminate any traffic backup as well. In closing, I would want to make the point that a large number of businesses in Winona are supported by the trucking industry. Whether it's groceries, clothes, medicine, etc., it all gets to Winona one way or the other by truck. When we try to limit truck traffic to the products we personally use, we are blocking others' businesses as well as their customers. I would want council members to weigh this carefully before limiting or shutting down a type of business for the wrong reasons. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Marilyn Doucette. Several points. When I was a little girl, my mom and dad taught me how to make a decision. If I couldn't make a decision any other way, do the pros and cons. Make a list. You don't need the cons. We all know what the cons are. Any of these people can give you something to add to the list. I don't have much on my pro side. I see the money. That's about it. I would like to know what the pros are to passing this. The other thing, the river sand. If silica sand is the same as river sand, anybody who's been up and down the river sees piles and piles of river sand. Go truck that in and use it for your fracking. I think that would be a great idea. Thirdly, the moratorium. Is it a moratorium or is it a moratorium, wink, wink?
Hello, my name is Colin Foss and I am the manager at Winona Aggregate. My name is Colin Foss and I've been the manager at Winona Aggregate for about 8 years. Winona Aggregate presently employs 22 people. And in 2007, we had 8. These 22 people live here, pay taxes here, shop here, and spend money in the city of Winona. I'm here to address some concerns about the truck traffic. We've heard about studies, wanting studies done, and we have a real-life study right in our front yard that I would like to invite the council to come look at. Every truck that comes into Winona Aggregate uses 3 roads every single time. There is no other way to get in there. You have County Road 32, 69th Avenue, and 5th Street. On all 3 of these roads, the trucks are going slow and either braking or accelerating, which obviously gives the most exposure to the roads for wear and tear. County 32 was last worked on in 2004. It was redone and it's blacktop, and that's 8 years ago, and that is a blacktop truck route. 69th Avenue was done in 2001. That's concrete, and it's also a truck route. 5th Street had a light overlay in 2008. It's not a road designed for trucks, and we simply cross it every day, in and out of the pit. The concerns about what truck traffic will do on the roads has been brought up several times, and when you drive past our pit, you'll notice you won't feel rutting, you won't see damage to those roads, and you won't see anything deteriorated beyond what the roads are anywhere else. And these are facts. I'm going to give you factual numbers, and I can pull these off of our facts because we have a computer system that keeps track of every single ton that comes in and out of our pit. In the last 3 years, we've had some big highway jobs. We had Highway 61, where we provided all the materials to. That went all the way up to Wabasha. So we had some pretty big numbers that came out of there. And we also have been processing the domestic energy sand since the Highway 14 project in the Arches in 2008. The fact is that since January 1st of 2010, 2.5 million tons have passed over those 3 roads in front of Winona Aggregate. These 2.5 million tons include the weight of the trucks, and you'll see for yourselves there's no road damage there. There's no rutting on that. Even the lightweight road that's not designed for trucks, you won't feel a thing when you drive through there. These numbers include the sand and gravel used in the concrete to build homes, driveways, parking lots, public buildings, and highways and bridges, as well as all other structures. Without sand and gravel pits, none of these are really possible. Your roads aren't going to be there. You can't have one without the other. We've been mining and shipping sand in this community for several decades. Please consider these facts and the people affected by having these jobs in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's please hold the applause. We don't need any of that.
Hi, Tony Wasinger. I work in the aggregate processing concrete business, and I just want to talk a little bit about economic advantages. And one of the things that we've done here is we've added with this business right now 17 jobs directly, and these are good jobs. These are jobs that are good paying jobs. They all have benefits, and if you do the math on that, that's somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 worth of payroll that we've paid out in the with these jobs, and those jobs weren't here. So economic benefit to the industry from this industry is very positive. In addition to that, we've also we spend a lot of money on parts and equipment and repair items for the equipment, so we get a secondary impact on all that. So we talk about pros and cons, and I just want to mention that there's a tremendous amount of pros that go along with the dollars that are spent, both not only on parts and equipment for this business, but also for the labor that goes into it. And all those dollars get turned over many times in this community. So I would urge council to continue to approve the CUP for CD Corp, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Della Schmidt, President of Winona Area Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, Mayor Miller, members of the council, city staff. The city of Winona has in place ordinances and regulations to manage the city. Business owners should have a reasonable confidence that if they meet these regulations and these conditions, their business operations will be allowed to proceed. I ask that the City Council strictly apply the city codes under which the Board of Adjustments approved the conditional use permit being discussed here this evening. Businesses that play by your rules should not be penalized by politics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple comments. I do not view denying the CUP.
Name, please.
My name is Daniel Wilson. I live at 832 West Broadway. I do not view denying the CUP as a penalty. Rather, following the moratorium that you guys enacted. And to provide some other information, there's a lot of facts going out. I have 7 copies of the material safety and data sheet from Halliburton, which is one of the major companies that is doing a lot of hydraulic fracturing for frac sand, silica sand. And I'll hand this out to everyone here, but just so I can read off of it, it says, danger, chronic health hazard, breathing crystalline silica can cause lung disease, including silicosis and lung cancer. Halliburton advises us to avoid creating dusty conditions. This is all in their material data MSDS. And just pointing out very obviously, the cars on the car dealerships next to the bridge are covered with sand, even though there's no longer a huge sand mountain a couple blocks down the road. So very obviously, sand is wafting off the bridge straight into downtown Winona. And then to also point out that crystalline silica is invisible, and to have a dust monitoring program that only monitors visible dust is not going to cover crystalline silica. And to my knowledge, I don't believe that technology exists currently to monitor crystalline silica. So creating a more comprehensive dust control policy that examines how do we monitor crystalline silica, which is the main health hazard. Any dust control policy that does not specifically address 0.5 micron crystalline silica is not a dust policy that is relevant to this industry. And just also pointing out the very obvious, the purpose of the moratorium is to stop the process of this industry and to just take a step back and see what's happening. The exception of the port is obviously not accomplishing the purpose of said moratorium. And to approve the port would be to not have a moratorium. And so just as a concerned citizen, I'm very confused of why the city would choose to do this. And as of yet, we have not received an adequate explanation. So this is from Halliburton on the website, so please feel free to double check it. So,
thank you. Okay, anyone else, or 1 or 2 more, or if not, just keep it short. 1 more.
I've been to several different meetings.
Name and address, please.
Jim Pompu, Minnesota City. Jim Pompu. I've been to several of these meetings, that I've gone to before about this sand. And, if you listen to these other people, it sounds like the sky is falling. You're scaring people. That sand is harmless. But I got a cousin, and his father has a big farm over in Wisconsin. From day 1, I was born, he'd be out there every summer, stay there for 3 months at a time. Right behind this big barn, they had this weird-looking sand. We played in that sand all the time. There were 10 of us in the family. Every year, we'd go out there. Dad would go out there with us. He would bring in buckets of sand, put it in the backyard for a sandbox. I played in that sand with diapers. I had stuffed in my ears, my eyes, and I probably ate a couple spoons full, too. All 10 of us are still alive. I'm 95. Or close to it. And I got brothers and sisters older and younger, so this is just a joke. This is business. One person was complaining about North Dakota or whatever it was, yeah. It's just bad, But out there, they're building houses. You watch, I think on the news, they're building houses. The cities are going. Sure, some old people like me that are scared of change. If they don't want change, why don't they go live with the Amish?
Let's not get personal here, all right? Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I will call on the city staff. Carlos?
Evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight for the CD Corps CUP appeal, the Council is assessing whether an order and resolution approved by the Board of Adjustment meets the requirements of City Code in order to grant a CUP for a sand transportation facility at 890 Riverview Drive. The Board's approval in May signaled that the resolution meets the requirements in the best judgment of the Board. There's 3 action items the council may take tonight. You may approve the CUP resolution as is. You may modify and amend the CUP resolution by adding appropriate conditions. You may also deny the resolution, articulating reasons for denial with the motion. Council may also table a decision for consideration at a later meeting. The proposal by CD Corps proposes to bring sand, washed or unwashed, into the city's port facility at 890 Riverview Drive. The proposal is to bring sand in off of an access road that currently exists and bring it to a hopper and loading pit where the sand will be dumped into the pit and then conveyed via covered conveyor to sand barges. Then the empty trucks will exit the site on a road consisting of a combination of concrete and recycled asphalt. They'll exit the road in this location here and then go out onto Riverview Drive for the exit. The intent with the application is to bring sand in and immediately load it onto barges. However, there is a temporary sand stockpile that is part of the conditional use permit, just in case the sand needs to be stockpiled temporarily. The resolution that was considered by the Board of Adjustment addresses a number of all of the conditions in the code that relate to sand transportation facilities. Those conditions, first of all, being performance standards. The performance standards that are in the code related to fire and explosion hazard, radioactivity, vibration, and smoke do not apply to this project. The applicant indicated that the project will conform to existing noise regulations similar to the way existing operations at the site conform with city ordinances for noise. Performance standards also require a dust control plan. I'll talk about that in the next slide. And they also require that any glare is not shown onto adjacent properties. Right now, the applicant is not considering any operation at night, and if it's added, the lights will not glare into adjacent properties. There's no liquid or solid waste from this site. There's no processing occurring, so there's no industrial wastewater coming from the site, so there's no liquid or solid waste being produced. The compliance with the performance standards and the other stipulations in the conditional use permit is required now and in the future, even if the requirements are changed as part of the moratorium study. The dust mitigation plan covers 4 different areas, including site roadways, drop distances, storage piles, and loading requirements. The plan stipulates that these things will be monitored on a daily basis, and they'll have a number of different equipment available to make sure the plan is enacted. The CUP requirements also have specific requirements for sand transportation facilities, the first being hard surfacing. The applicant proposes to use a combination of concrete and recycled asphalt for the trucks to drive on after unloading. An important part about the resolution is that it stipulates that additional hard surfacing may be required in the future by the city if needed. As far as tracking pads, the applicant does not propose to put any tracking pads in, but again, it may be required by the city in the future if needed. Enclosure of sand stockpiles and equipment is not applicable to the application because all of the stockpiles and equipment is greater than 500 feet from the closest residential area. Next, hours of operation. The applicant proposes to have hours of operation between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. for the sand portion of the operation. This is in line with the CUP requirements, and it's proposed potentially, if needed, to operate Monday through Sunday. The truck route that is in the conditional use permit consists of the Interstate Bridge, 4th Street, Huff, and Riverview. That truck route saw the average daily traffic numbers that are on the slide. The bridge saw 11,600, 4th Street saw 5,100, Huff 7,900, and Riverview Drive 8,600 average daily traffic. The application adds an average of 60 trucks per day, so like was mentioned earlier, that means 120 trips, so 60 trucks going into the facility and 60 trucks coming out. The bridge in 2007 had an 11,600 ADT number. At 15,000 ADT, you will start to see potential congestion issues at peak times, so in the morning and then later on at night for a few hours. There has been an increase in truck traffic and overall traffic since 2007, but there's still a 3,000 plus vehicle per day cushion And thus, the 120 additional truck trips are an increase that can be handled by the truck route as specified in the conditional use permit. The CUP requirements also stipulate requirements for landscaping and screening. Because of the industrial nature of the operation and the area which it's occurring in, none are proposed, but again, they may be required in the future by the city. Contact information, of course, is provided, and also permits must be on file here at City Hall. The permit that CD Corps has is from the MPCA, and that relates to industrial stormwater. And that industrial stormwater permit is satisfied by a stormwater pollution prevention plan that CD Corps follows. That stormwater prevention pollution plan fulfills the MPCA permitting requirement for stormwater. The plan covers all activity on site. There are no non-stormwater discharges. In addition, the site has retaining walls and low areas on the site that help prevent stormwater from escaping the site. The water from those low areas is used in dust mitigation, so spraying on truck drives to make sure that dust is not created when trucks drive over the driveways. Annual reports to the MPCA are also required as part of the prevention plan. Other conditions listed in the resolution have to do with spillage. They have to be, anything that's spilled is required to be cleaned up by the operation. Also, any additional monitoring or monitoring equipment can be required by the city. Any additional monitoring equipment or monitoring that is determined to be needed as a result of the moratorium can be added to the CUP. Also, amendments to the CUP can be made as deemed necessary and appropriate by the city. The board added a condition to the conditional use permit. The condition being that an average of 1 sand barge is to be loaded per day, not to exceed 24 barges per month. The applicant agreed to the condition. It cuts the number of trucks from 180 on the application down to an average of 60 per day. This is more in line with previous estimates of sand barge activity, and it provides the necessary flexibility for the barge industry. Again, there's 3 action items the council may take tonight: approve, modify and amend, or deny. May also table. And that's my presentation. The chairman of the Board of Adjustment would like to make a short statement about the board's consideration of the CUP.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, my name is Chris Sanchez. I'm Chairman of the Board of Adjustments. On behalf of the Board of Adjustments, I want to inform the Council about the decision to grant the conditional use permit to CD Corp. After review, the Board felt that all conditions that the City requires for a conditional use permit had been met. As a result of the conditions being met, the Board decided that a conditional use permit should be granted. The Board also found that by granting a conditional use permit to CD Corp would be under tighter restrictions and would be operating under the conditional use permit guidelines. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
I would also note for the record, we did receive a letter from Tex Hawkins at 318 West King Street, and that will be entered into the record.
Okay, at this time, I would ask the representative from CD to, if he wishes, to make a few comments.
Dan Nisbet with CD Corporation. I think there's been a lot of good pros and cons as people asked for, a lot of pros that have been presented tonight. I think you need to hear the truthful information. There's a lot of myths and I think a lot of false rhetoric out there. I really think you need to listen to the experts in the situation. Leave the bridge issues up to the Minnesota DOT. The road issues in the city of Winona to the engineering department or the streets department. Let them tell you their input. And the legality of the CUP, I think the city attorney can advise you very well on that, as you know. You know, in essence here, the crazy thing about this matter is we're dealing with sand. When you're referring to this as frac sand, I would say that this sand is not technically frac sand until it's used in the fracking industry. There's which I hope isn't a secret, this very same sand As you may well know, Mayor Miller, this silica sand is used by all the foundries in Winona. It's a high-grade sand that's used in the castings. So should we refer to some of the sand as frac sand, some of the sand as foundry sand? The very same sand is used for bedding cattle. So sometimes when the trucks are hauling this sand, we should probably call it bedding sand. The very same sand in a smaller size, part of the byproduct of this industry, is used for glass, for all the new glass production. The sand that we are talking about, the particle size, they've talked about silicosis today. Silicosis is a real thing. Not in regards to what we're handling. We're handling a wet sand, not a dried sand. For the sand to become airborne, it needs to be dry. Particle size, if you look on the internet when they talk about particle size, it needs to be fragmented and it needs to be of a gradation of 300 or smaller. The sand that we're looking at and the sand that's needed for the oil and gas industry is a gradation of anywhere from a 20 to a 70. The larger the numbers, or the smaller the numbers, the larger the size. The gradation does not allow, it's the same gradation as what's found in the river sand, which gets dredged up and put on a pile. The traffic concerns, I've done some research, and I think as far as the commercial harbor, I think the expert on that situation, you might possibly look to Lucy McMartin. When I'm done here, I would like to ask her if you give the traffic trends in the port. I have my graphs, but maybe she could elaborate on that. If you look back as far as 10 years ago, it looks to me like there was 628 more barges that left the city of Winona's harbors, which equates at 60 trucks to 37,680 more trucks a year 10 years ago than today. We are proposing far, far less than that. If you do the math the way other people seem to be doing the math, apparently that would be 75,000 trucks, because you have to take it times 2 because them trucks are coming and going. Our business is basically barging and trucking. Every barge that comes into the port is equal to 60 trucks, whether it's coal, salt, or fertilizer. Our job is to try and promote more business into the port, whether it happens to be sand or what other products it might be. As was stated before, the Winona Port is the 3rd largest in Minnesota, which I think is something that we should be very proud of, and I think it's something that we do need to embrace. Winona is a river town. Winona was founded on moving products up and down the river. And as far as Winona, the trucking industry is prevalent in Winona, and as was alluded to before, it's a very, very important part. This issue goes far beyond the frac sand in my mind now. I believe that the city of Winona is going to give the perception to other businesses that you can come to the city of Winona if you do not need trucks, if you do not need raw materials that are brought in by truck, or if you're going to produce a finished product that is sent out by trucks. Furthermore, I hope that we're not sending a message to the businesses that are in Winona, such as Harvest States, which is here today, Fastenal, Benchmark, ADM, Fragrant Malt, Bay State, RTP, that they can stay where they're at right now, but we certainly do not want expansion of business that might need additional truck traffic in Winona. By voting no to this, I truly feel that that is what you are saying. You're giving a perception of not wanting any businesses that need trucks to operate, and that existing businesses, we do not want any expansion or progress in the city of Winona if it involves needing any trucks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lucy, you want to say anything related to that?
Yes, Mayor and Council, some of the numbers from the Port Authority as far as the number of barges that are handled in the facility. Last year, the Port Authority handled 1,019 barges. This number has varied over the last 10 years from 740 to 1,647 barges in 2002. So this traffic activity does fluctuate, and it has been higher by 600 or more barges. Just as the commodities, last year there were 1.9 million tons of commodities in the entire harbor, and back in 2000, that number was 2.8 million tons. So the capacity varies with time in the harbor based on supply and demand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to call on City Attorney to make a few comments, then I'll make a few comments, and then I'll start with Al, and we'll go right through down the line to the council. Okay?
Mayor and Council, again, as we talked about, the issue before you tonight is specifically was the decision of the Board of Adjustments to approve the conditional use permit for CD Corporation on May 2nd, 2012 in compliance with the applicable standards and criteria for a CUP contained in Winona City Code. As I indicated or mentioned earlier, in a quasi-judicial capacity, in a judge position, the council's role is to weigh the evidence and to apply the specific standards and criteria and determine whether or not those standards and criteria have been met. If you determine that those standards and criteria have been met, then you should approve the decision of the Board of Adjustments or affirm it. If you believe that those standards haven't been met and that they can be met through additional conditions, you do have the discretion to add conditions to the conditional use permit tonight. You could also add conditions to the conditional use permit in the future. You could also add conditions to the conditional use permit because the conditional use permit expressly contains this provision at some point in the future, even as a result of what is determined as part of the moratorium. So there are numerous options and significant flexibility with respect to this. And by that I mean this conditional use permit that is approved tonight does not necessarily mean it is written in stone. It could be changed based on what happens during the moratorium process. With respect to the moratorium, which you passed in March, the moratorium expressly excluded the commercial harbor dock from the moratorium. Rightly or wrongly, that is what the law is in the city of Winona at this time. And so in terms of whether or not this application complied with the moratorium, it did, because the moratorium excludes the dock facility. And so keep that in mind. That does not mean that you cannot look at other avenues or reasoning for modifying the permit, but the moratorium is not one of those avenues that you can consider. Tonight, there's also included at the end of the packet, I think it's after the green sheet in the packet, are some proposed findings. The operative section of the findings are contained on pages 2, 3, and 4. It presents 3 alternatives for the council's consideration this evening. The findings are numbered 1 through 11. Essentially, they go through and summarize the jurisdiction of the city and the basis for how this appears before you this evening through an appeal by the Chasm Group, that the council has jurisdiction pursuant to City Code Section 22.21G, that the council has heard testimony this evening and has given a full opportunity for the appellant to present their case before you this evening, and now you are in a position to begin your deliberations on that. And those would include, of course, your own discussion amongst yourself or any additional questions that you might have of me or others. The three alternatives that are before you tonight are to approve issuance of the CUP, and that's alternative 1, which basically states that the CUP substantially satisfy both the general and specific standards and criteria set forth in Winona City Code section 43.63B40 and otherwise is in compliance with applicable provisions of law and code. That the order of the Winona City Board of Adjustments dated May 10, 2012, approving a conditional use permit to CD Corporation pursuant to said code for the property located at 890 Riverview Drive, which is legally described therein, is hereby affirmed in its entirety, and city staff are further authorized and directed to record the CUP along with the legal description in accordance with state law. The alternative number 2 is modification. It essentially states the same thing in paragraph 1, except that it's subject to, it satisfies requirements, but is subject to additional modifications. Item number 2 specifically seeks that for those modifications that you state what the reasons are for those modifications. Item 3 is that you state the specific modifications for the CUP, and then item 4 is directing staff to record that CUP with the modifications that you lay out. Alternative 3 is denial. States that the CUP does not satisfy the general and specific standards and criteria set forth in applicable city code, and that the order of the Board of Adjustments is therefore denied. And then obviously if you do decide to take that action, you will need to state your reasons for denying the CUP, and those reasons need to be tied directly to the standards and criteria in code. Thank you.
Okay. Just make a couple of comments and a couple of suggestions for council. Just so everybody knows, we listen. We have listened, and we've listened to everybody who spoke, and I'm sure we all read all the emails we got and all that. So, you know, we are aware of what people's feelings are on all sides of the issue. I would like to suggest to council that that we look at some possible modifications. And I know that some may not like this, some may like it, but I would like to see us limit the material that can be loaded into barges at the dock during the moratorium period to just the washed sand that originates or that was washed either at Koner's facility or Hemker's facility. In other words, just that sand that they're washing is the only sand that can be loaded into the barge. If anyone from Wisconsin or wherever, if they want to bring sand in, or they or somebody would have to come and ask for an amendment to the CUPs. So that's one thing. I would ask again that we consider only the sand coming, the washed sand coming from Hemker or Koner during this moratorium period be allowed to be loaded by barge. Number 2, we all take the health issue very seriously. And if the moisture levels in the sand is 4% or more, it drastically minimizes the fugitive dust exposure. I would suggest that every load that comes in to be dumped or to be loaded out be probed. This is done in industries all over. I know it's done in, when we were in, where were we? Chippewa Falls. Every load that comes in is checked for moisture. If that moisture is 4% or higher, the risk of fugitive dust exposure is very minimal. If it goes below that, then we would make, or we would ask, or part of the deal would be that that the operator would have to come up with a different method of fugitive dust control, of which, you know, we all study this stuff. There are many things that can be done to control the dust, some mechanical things that can be installed that create something that just holds the dust right there. So that would be part of that other suggestion. Number 3, I think CD already has agreed, I think I read in here, that the conveyors conveying the material into the barge be hooded. So that again would eliminate some of the exposure to the dust. So that's my original comments. I'm sure I might have some more later on. So we'll start with Al and go around the council and then George.
Could I just ask one question
Yep.
before we go to council? If someone from staff can explain why the port was exempted from this moratorium. That question seemed to surface a lot tonight. What was the main reason why it was exempted?
Yes, Mayor and members of council, the Port Authority Riverfront Committee looked at the dock facility 6 to 8 years ago, even 10 years ago, and realized that an investment had to be made in either repairing this dock at the existing location or building a new dock facility. The Port Authority reviewed this issue for many years and felt that locating the dock in a new area in the commercial harbor area would be more economically and environmentally sensitive. The reason for that is product would not have to be unloaded at the dock facility where there's only 2 acres and then transported by truck to where the storage pads are. So the Port Authority felt as though construction of a new dock facility would logistically be a good decision to make. Being that this has been in the planning process for 8 to 10 years, we knew that in 2012 that there would be a move from the dock facility to the new area for loading. Because we knew that activity of the transfer to the new area were to occur, and that frac sand was handled in 2010 and in 2011 at the dock facility, we felt as though including this language in the moratorium would allow that transfer to occur smoothly. At no time 6 or 8 years ago when all this planning was being done was it anticipated that it would become solely a frac sand issue.
That answer your question? Okay, Al.
Thank you, Mayor Miller, and thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. And I've been, during our discussion, kind of reviewing some of my notes and comments on what people have said, what issues they've brought up. I'll try to. I can't lean too far into the microphone here. I agree with most of Mayor Miller's thoughts on how we can modify this, and I think this is a good direction to go in. I don't know if I'm ready to make a decision right now, but I'll see what other comments are around the table here. We do have the option to discuss this and then bring it back. So I'd like to see how that might play out tonight with the rest of the council members. But I think there's some legitimate concerns about traffic issues and about dust. I would really like to see us complete that traffic study that was brought up by some of the folks here and look at a way to address some of the dust issues that may or may not happen. Now, as Mayor Miller pointed out, if the sand is wet, dust doesn't seem to be an issue. I need more information on that. I'm not really sure that that's the way to go at this point. So, in summary, I'd like to see us get more information and bring this back at a later date to digest that information, unless there's some compelling reasons around the rest of this table that might have us make that decision tonight. Thank you.
Hey, Jerry?
When the options were brought forth, first off, thank you, everybody. I think we all know it's a tough issue, and with one minor exception, everybody was really professional and handled it very, very well, and we really appreciate that. And if you're enjoying yourself tonight, don't forget that you can still, those who live in Winona, there are still some uncontested seats and up until 4 o'clock or so tomorrow, so don't forget to file. So you can run and sit up here and enjoy this on a continuous full-time basis. So please, don't hesitate. We want to see a line out there tomorrow. And I do mean that. But for tonight, when we heard the options that we had in front of us, the option that I found to be one of the worst ones, especially since so many people are here and now so much work was done, is to have to bring it back. However, I see now in front of us that we're awfully limited. And City Attorney, you did a phenomenal job. So I'm saying this in a compliment. But option 1, to approve, pretty simple, if that is what you want to do. Option 2 is going to take some time. Option 3, I don't believe we have an option 3, and that's the option I'm kind of leaning towards, and that is how do you deny it? Because if I were to deny it, it would be on the very basis of the moratorium. Because I guess I didn't fight hard enough when we did the moratorium, was in favor of it. I always had a little bit of discomfort to exempt the Port Authority, and that's the main issue for me, to be against it. A lot of other underlying issues, pro-con, but that's the main issue, but I'm hearing tonight that that's not an issue that we can deny it upon. And hearing from many of you, that is one of the main issues that you're really talking about. Hey, we got these other underlying issues, but hey, let's give it the year. And now I'm hearing tonight that that is not grounds to deny it, so therefore, I guess I'm with Councilman Thurley, and I might need more time.
Hey, Michelle?
That was kind of what we were kind of whispering back and forth here as you were talking. I don't believe that we have what we need to deny under the current CUP. So, but I actually think Mayor Miller brings up some good points about ways we can keep the port open and operating, but use some more protection to do it. So I would rather work through this issue and get it off the table and move on to getting the studies done than bring this back later, because we're all sitting here waiting to see what's going to happen. And I guess my impulse would be to come up with some extra conditions, move forward and just focus on the study and looking maybe at the moratorium, maybe some of the other issues people brought up, but not waiting anymore. I think there's a lot of waiting happening, and it feels like nothing's getting done, although I know things are, but it feels like nothing is because we're still in the same position. So I'm leaning towards looking at these conditions that Mayor Miller brought up.
Debbie.
Thank you. And thank you, yes, everyone, for coming. Your time, your energy, and your effort is much appreciated, your phone calls and your emails as well. Has been stated already, and then also the city attorney, what we can only focus on tonight is this issue at hand. Whether standards and criteria have been met for this CUP. Also, I think as a reminder, I believe the city attorney did say this as well. If we do go forward, let's say modify, and that's where I have originally been leaning for, and there was some modification as this runs tangent, even though we're not considering the moratorium, is that we can also at some point in the future, based on findings that come about for the moratorium, we can make changes again, correct? Right, so we do have that flexibility to say whatever may happen tonight, as the time goes forward, we can do something even during that period as well, depending upon what comes out with the studies. And as a reminder for some of us, the Planning Commission on their schedule, they will be looking at specifically, transportation, as well as we're going forward. That said, with all the information that we have here, and I know people do want to move forward, but I think for me is the fact that we can also add some things if we need to. So I think a decision tonight I support being made, and I like the present proposals that the mayor did put out as well for modification for this. I do have a couple of questions. I think it's also good for the public to hear this as well, and some of it may be reiterated. But addressing the letter that CASM has, and maybe this is a Judy or Lucy can answer this one, and for clarification for the public, when it said they are saying the income, that comes from our Port Authority. I know sometimes it's kind of hard to understand. They have a budget that they operate on, separate, and they're our economic engine and driver for the community. They're stating in the letter that this income will not go to the city's general fund, and it appears the Winona taxpayers will realize no financial benefit from the dock expansion. Could we maybe have a little further explanation that what the Port Authority really does and the economic drive and how that potentially can have a lot of effects, for the city as well?
Mayor and Council, maybe I can try to answer that question for you. First of all, the Port Authority does have its own budget. It is reviewed and approved by Council on a yearly basis. It has revenue sources that may be different from the city's general fund and its regular sources. One of the biggest parts of the Port Authority's revenue source is the operation of the commercial harbor. What does happen is the Port Authority of Winona reimburses the city of Winona for all the economic development activities that take place. More importantly, it pays for the staff related to economic development. So in the instance of the Winona Port Authority, they actually reimburse the city of Winona for city staff purposes and the amount of time that's spent on economic development. So there is a benefit to the taxpayers in that reimbursement comes back to the city's general fund for economic development staff. The Port Authority uses its funds for the economic development projects that occur in the city of Winona. A major part of the port's budget in the past has been used to help fund infrastructure, and the Pelzer Street project was funded in part by the Port Authority of Winona and revenues that they had, including a tax levy to help fund the completion of Pelzer Street. The Port Authority funds have built many, many industrial parks in the city of Winona, and every time a project is completed, the revenues that we receive from those projects then go on to the next project. Whether it be the Middle Yard Industrial Park, whether it be the technology park that exists, or any other projects that may have been undertaken in downtown Winona that were participated by the Port Authority. So we've had lots of projects that have taken place by the port, helping to develop the actual activities that take place in the city of Winona. Does that help answer your question?
That's my question. Thank you. And I'm hoping it's also for the audience and the viewers as well. We do definitely, I know it's very important, and I can't speak for all of us, is our quality of life, and it's the balance of the quality of life and environment and our economic development pieces in the community. So we have to take all of that into consideration. They're all important so that we have a viable community as well. A couple other questions might be for CD, or maybe it's for staff as well. Just for a frame of reference, when you're on the application, you said the months of year that you would be, for this CUP application, you had 12 months that you'd be operating. That's what it says on the application here. Just kind of curious, is it 12 months? Is it just for the shipping season, which is 8 months, right?
We would probably be operating just during the shipping season.
Right, because I know it says on here for the sand processing and transportation operations for the CUP application, it said 12 months. And approximately wondering, like, how many, do you remember about how many trucks that brought in sand to the port for 2010 and 2011? Is that you were bringing in sand prior to the moratorium? Do you remember approximately how many trucks were used for those at the time?
10 barges would be approximately 600 trucks.
Right, okay. Thank you. Carlos, question for you. On the fugitive dust control plan, that CD Corp, that's in our packet. Number 1A, and it says the dust on the side roadways and, plant, and it was handwritten there, may be controlled. And also in the last sentence under 8, it says may be done. And I know there's always a question between want or shall be done. Are you able to help us understand a little bit better why it would be maybe or maybe not will be?
I think that the main reason that the maybe is in there is It depends on when those applications are needed, and it depends if water or calcium chloride is needed. Sometimes if it's been very wet lately, we won't have a problem with dust, and if that's what's going on, then application won't be needed for the calcium chloride or the water. So it's something that is going to happen on an as-needed basis. Again, the report talks about daily monitoring of the operations. So if dust is being created, as needed, water or calcium chloride will be applied to the roadways to make sure that the dust is mitigated.
And that comes to my other question when you said daily monitoring, and who does that again?
That would be up to CD Corp.
Right. And as far as, again, the good question that always comes up is, as far as the city going for inspection, and what do we have planned as how we could regularly do that?
Well, one thing we can do is ask for the inspection log that was included as part of your packets, so we can make sure that we have a record of what actions are being taken at what specific periods of time.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Okay, George.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. Both sides have given us pages and pages of information. As far as making a decision tonight, I would be ready to vote. I have pages of information here. The mayor just added two more that we could be voting on. But however, just to make a few comments is that the business of frac sand or sand is here. It's not going to go away. Our region is rich with it. Southeast Minnesota, Wisconsin, there's frac sand all over. The demand for natural gas is on the rise, and that due to the fact in order to extract the natural gas, we need frac sand for the drilling of it. For instance, many trucking companies today are starting to now convert their diesel engines over to a fuel called compressed natural gas. It's greener for the environment, it's cheaper, and it has safer and better emissions for their vehicles. If I believed tonight that we could stop the frac sand industry, I would vote against this CUP tonight. But I don't feel that we can stop this industry. However, what we can do, and we can do it here, is we can regulate it. There are 10 conditions that are put on this CUP for CD to follow, plus the mayor brought up a couple more that could possibly be incorporated in that as well too. They're very stringent conditions. If these conditions are violated, the permit is pulled and there's nothing to discuss about it. Trucks traveling over the bridge. Can we stop trucks coming over the bridge? I don't know. I don't think we can. The trucks coming over the bridge have two options for us here. Option number one is they can come here, deposit their load at the Port Authority dock. We receive revenue off of it, receive some road tax off of it. Or they can come over the bridge, go right through our town. Go right down Highway 43, pass through, go deposit their load, their sand, whatever it may be, somewhere else, and we get absolutely nothing. My vote tonight would be to affirm the decision of the CUP for CD Corporation, and choosing those options, I choose option one. I just as soon have that truck stop here, receive the revenue, then travel on and receive absolutely nothing. Thank you.
Okay, Council, everybody, anyone want to add anything else, or is there someone want to make a motion, or what is your pleasure? George.
I would so move, Mayor, just to begin with the two additional options that you brought up, accepting only wash sand from toner and Hemper operations and doing the moisture test to be added to the modify and amend of the CUP.
Okay.
I second that.
Second by Michelle. Any discussion on that?
Are we having a percentage specification for the wetness? Are you stating that in your motion?
As he mentioned, yes, 4%.
And also what I'd like to have added on there is that those readings be sent over to the city and the city put it on its webpage. So everybody would know what the moisture.
Who does the readings?
They'll do it. It's a very simple process. You put the probe in, the way I understand it, and it reads. Or we can have, every now and then, we can have staff go over and do it.
I'd like that, and Mr. Nesbitt, please don't take it the wrong way. I would say this to anybody, but self-policing, if we just said, as Mr. Borshkowski said, there's some pretty good teeth in here. If they violate some of these things, it's pulled. So there's, I mean, I would feel much better if we did more than just periodic testing. A third party, somebody else is going to have to be doing some testing on this. Otherwise, why even put it in there?
I think one thing to consider too, if the sand is coming from washing facilities, it's going to be significantly wetter than 4%. It's going to have a moisture content around 15% or even greater because it's coming, in most cases, right from a facility where water is literally dripping off the sand. So the intent of the application is to load the sand directly onto barges. So when it comes in, it will not just be wet. In most cases, it will be sopping wet. And if it's temporarily stockpiled on the site, that is one instance where it might dry out a bit, but that's where the moisture monitoring would come in.
Well, I still would want at every truck that comes in, I'd like to have it whether it's 4%, 10% or 15%, and we should know that.
And we can get a report for everything that's monitored there as part of the CUP.
Michelle?
So what we're saying is they're going to monitor every load, but we're going to have people go over periodically and just check? I'm confused now about which one.
We do that?
What we can do is we can have them produce a report, just like the dust mitigation plan that lists all of the samples that are taken, what the moisture content was, and we can review that report. We also have the ability to enforce the CUP and to perform and check the tests ourselves.
I'm against this, but for discussion, if you're going to move forward and you really want to make this real and want to put some teeth in it, I don't want us just to have the ability. I want it tonight. If we're saying let's hammer it out tonight, however long it takes, let's put those guidelines in there. I mean, it's no less than X number of times per month, something along that line.
You mean where we inspect?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fine.
We'd still do it every load,
Sure.
but we would have, okay.
Instead of just saying we have the ability or when we can or whatever, I mean, let's get, we're putting equal to or greater than 4%. Okay, we would do the same thing. We're going to check them. We could check them every day, but we're going to check them at a minimum of.
What minimum do you want?
I don't know. I'm not going to be part of this. I'm voting against it. I'm just trying to help you guys.
Got a bingo machine?
Yeah, I would suggest that, first of all, that the city's notified when they're going to be loading a barge, okay? Number two, that when that barge is being loaded, that the city on that day no less than 5 times go down and check 5 of the 60 loads coming in. On a spot deal. I mean, we got inspectors, we can do that. George can go down over lunch.
A little conflict of interest.
Yeah. So, if that could be part of the motion, that the city be notified when a barge is being loaded, and on that day, the city 5 times go down and take periodic checks. Moisture check.
I would agree with that.
Michelle?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Question?
Just a statement here too as well. If this passes, that we've modified it, because it's been reduced right now, but I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, City Attorney, what I mentioned earlier in my comments that you have informed us about, that as time goes on during the moratorium process, though, we can come back and add conditions, which my understanding be, for example, we could go back to the original conditions and criteria of the CUP that's before us now.
That's correct. And you may identify other things that you want to do in the future as well.
So we have,
you may
that
want to
can
modify
also,
these.
okay, so it can go that way as well as time goes on, or tangent to and dovetailing information that we get, so during that process that could be changed.
Right. We can make any changes that come aware that we feel have to be
So
done.
that we can see as that it's all this information coming at the, a lot that we, at the same time in a way that's unfolding and developing to try to get a good balance for everyone, I think, here.
Okay, Al.
I just want to comment too. I want to confirm that I thought the Board of Adjustment made the correct decision, and it's now up to us to modify that decision. I agree with that decision, but I still feel there's some doubts in my mind about some of the issues that have been brought up tonight, and we should address those. But again, as you say, we can address them in the future by modifying the CUP, but I'm still uncomfortable voting for even that agreement.
Yeah. We can modify any time we want. Jerry.
I also want to thank the Board of Adjustment. I think the real mistake, which will come back and haunt us multiple times, was the manner in which we put the moratorium in place, and this is just one of them. And so the Board of Adjustment was dealing with what they had in front of them. Now we got to deal with what we have in front of us, but now we see the pain, and nobody was being dishonest, nobody was being anything else back then, but now we see that moratorium may not have had the teeth that we had hoped it would have. Now, one more friendly suggestion for you guys. So one truck, one test is too dry. Is that enough to pull it? One truckload comes from the wrong place. Is that enough to pull it? It's an honest mistake. I'm not trying to be funny. We have to set a threshold of when are we going to pull and for how long.
I have a question about that, because if the truck is coming from a washing facility and they're probing it there, as long as they don't load it onto the barge, aren't they doing what they're required to do? Are we holding CD Corp responsible for another portion, like a washing facility that they have no control over? If they test it and they say it's not the right moisture content and they don't load the barge, then they've done what they're supposed to do.
I think CD has the right to reject the load.
Right, so then what I'm saying is I don't see how we could pull their permit if they don't load that load. It's not their fault that someone brought it in under moisture content.
If it's under moisture content, I'm sure CD will not take the load.
Right.
And I'm talking about all this stuff. Any one of these now, it's I guess 12 points that we've put in here. Any one of them, CD's going to do the best they can to follow through on it. We know that. But in the event that things slip, there's a difference between, making a mistake or really just trying to circumvent it. When are you going to, is it strike one, strike two, strike three? I think that needs to be identified either tonight or very soon. Otherwise, again, there's no teeth.
Well, I think that why don't we load a barge out and see what happens? We'll have the procedure where we'll go in, we'll test, they'll test, see what it's running. We can always come back and say that one strike and you're out. I think we got to have some faith. You got to have some trust in the companies that we're dealing with. I know CD to be a reputable company. I know Kohner to be a reputable company, and I know Hemker to be a reputable company. And if we're saying the only sand that we're going to allow to go dump in there is from these guys are going to do the job. They don't want to risk it.
Jerry, I know that, and I know they run good organizations. However, we heard this before, and anytime we talk about if you're going to put some stipulations on it, okay, what happens if? Now, we're personalizing with these three, which makes it more complicated, but if we're going to go through the steps, and if not tonight, maybe we bring it back very quickly, but you have to have, okay, what is it? Maybe strike one is too harsh. Maybe strike four is too easy, but there has to be some thought process in that. Otherwise, we will be accused of, and rightfully so, about, well, you didn't put any teeth in it, so why do you even have it?
What's the normal procedure when a CUP is violated?
Good question.
I mean, there must be something in place already, correct? Otherwise, what's the point of issuing it?
I don't think there is anything in current code. And state statute doesn't really spell it out really well either, but the general school of thought is that if you have violations of the conditions in a permit, and it's a little bit like any sort of license revocation that you would enter into. I mean, it's a similar type of a process where there would be, a notification to the company warning them that there's been a violation, that they need to correct that. If there's continual failure related to that, I don't know if it's 3 strikes and you're out or what exactly it is, but at some point then there would be a hearing before the council, and the council would then determine whether or not to revoke the conditional use permit.
I'd recommend we take a look at something like that. We've kind of got a template, albeit not really related, but with our other licensure, and that'd be with the liquor licenses. And we have notification, strike 1, strike 2, you have X, and then, of course,
rental housing as well, too.
Or, landlords and whatnot. And
Right.
maybe that is something that staff can bring back to us maybe at the next meeting. To say here's something that sounds reasonable and doable, because if it isn't reasonable and doable, sometimes you're not going to enforce that anyway. So it's follow through. And that makes sense. That's logical. You say this amount of thing and work with, the businesses as well, because I think they want to do well. Absolutely, because that's part of their business.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to accept or add the following, that number 1, the only sand that would be allowed to be loaded into barge come from Corner or Hemker, wash sand from Corners or Hemkers, and number 2, that the levels be 4% or greater, and that the city, when a barge is being loaded, that the city take at least 5 samples that the city takes. Does that cover it?
Do we need to include we need to come back and look at?
Right, okay.
Like what's the criteria for if the CUP gets pulled in an operation?
Okay, so would that be okay with the 2? Okay, and then also that we want the results, the moisture results, put on the city's webpage. Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
2 opposed. Okay. Now, does someone want to make a main motion? With the,
It was.
oh, that included everything, all right, so that's it.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was distracted.
Is there any point where we could have some input into this? I mean, there's, what you just said is a very vague stipulations. You said wash sand coming from Corner and Hemker?
Yep.
Which facility?
Both, either one.
Hemker's going to have a wash facility
In Winona. They got to be located in Winona. In other words, what that does, it eliminates a lot of the trucks coming from across the river during the moratorium.
Where do you, not to question your judgment, but where do you think the sand that they get, that they wash, where do you think that
It comes from across the river. We know where it comes from.
If you were to load raw sand, you would be eliminating a lot of trucks.
If you keep talking, you'll talk your way right out of this. What we want to do is make sure that the sand comes from the 2 plants in Winona. So that if there's a wash plant owned by Corner or Hemker or Joe Blow over there, they can't come over here and load a barge unless this council would, they would amend that. It also means that if they got raw sand over there, they can't bring it over unless they come and ask for an amendment.
One other question. What if there's sand coming from Minnesota? Or it would just specifically be those 2 plants?
Those 2 places. Ma'am.
I just want to point out that the application that was approved did not include any traffic route or traffic information on washed sand. That was added as a comment during the meeting. The route that is mapped out in the application
Third, 4th Street, Puff Street, Riverview Drive into the port. End of story.
Well, isn't it better if it comes from Hemker right across the overpass to the dock?
Can we ask for a
That sounds a lot better than going.
For a new application showing the new route?
What I would suggest is that staff and CD get together and then come back with the route at the next meeting. I mean, it's very simple. Instead of coming across the bridge and going through all that you said, Hemker will come, he'll go down 14, he'll cross the overpass, and he'll go to the dock.
Want to come in across the bridge and then go
The sand, the raw sand that Hemker gets and Corner gets from across the river, all we're doing is addressing the dock. We're not addressing the what's being loaded on 2nd Street or what's being loaded behind the city garage.
This is a closed meeting, Your Honor.
Pardon?
Jerry, Your Honor, it's a closed
Yeah.
meeting.
Robert's Rules of Order. Is this now open to input?
No.
Then why are we?
I'm letting some people talk.
Well, you can't let some people selectively talk and open it up so we can all talk. Or shut it down.
All right, one more. Go ahead.
Yes, since it's been expressed well by Councilman Craig that, in his feeling anyway, that it was a mistake to exempt the port from the moratorium, is it possible for you folks right this moment to change that decision and say, we are not going to exempt the port?
I think the city attorney will address that.
No.
No. Okay, one more. Let's
Just
go.
one, but could they limit the traffic to 100 barges so that the port would not be expanding from the amount of sand that it loaded last year? It would really enforce a moratorium for the port. It would still allow the sand to be shipped from the port, but it would mean that it'd be limited to what it was before the moratorium.
I think there's a limit of what, 24 barges a month? Yeah, right. Okay, what's next on the agenda?
Okay, moving forward on the agenda under petitions, requests, and communications, item 3.1.
We'll let them get on.
I was ready to make a motion, knowing it was going to fail. But when I saw that you can't stuff from our attorney, that's the only reason I wanted to get out. I don't have enough information.
Right.
Your attorney's using it. It's right to the first community. When I saw that,
Because I looked at it and thought, what are Okay, item 3.1 is the club wine and...
No, we voted on the main motion with those amendments. Okay.
Item 3.1 is the club wine and off-sale liquor license renewals for 2012. We do have, city ordinance requires that the 2011 property taxes and the utility bills be current. We do have two that are not current. That would be Sammy's Pizza and Gulfview Liquor. So the motion would be to approve all the other applicants and contingent on the payment of the delinquent utility and property taxes no later than Friday, June 29th.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Debbie. Is there a second?
Second.
And by George. Questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, which is to approve the licenses minus the two, right?
Those two continue.
Yeah, the two, right. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, carried.
Item 3.2 is the Team Vogel versus Cancer event set for June 23rd. I would note that their request, they did not request to waive the fees. That was from a few years ago. They have paid the fees to rent the city facilities. They're looking for assistance for their 5K race.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Jerry, second by Michelle. Questions? All in favor of the motion, which is to approve the request by Team Mobile. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, carried.
Item 3.3 is the Winona State University street closure request for August 20th, and this would be the streets around the band shell.
Move to approve the request.
Moved by Debbie, second by Al. Questions? All in favor of the motion, which is to approve the street closures, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, carried.
Item 3.4 is the license agreement for the Winona Artisan Market.
Move to approve that request.
Second.
Moved by George, second by Debbie. Questions? All in favor of the motion, which is to approve the artisan market. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, carried.
The next item will be pulled from the agenda at the request of the organizers. They wanted more time to review that proposed agreement. We do have a new item that was handed out this evening. It's a request to close Wabasha Street this Friday from Market to Franklin from 4 to 8 p.m. and that request was submitted by Susan Briggs.
I move to approve.
Moved by Michelle, second by George. All questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
7.1 is council concerns.
Okay, George.
Okay,
Or is it Al's turn? Okay, we'll start with Al.
Go ahead, Al.
Al.
Well, whatever.
right,
Just a
Al.
reminder, the cherry tree ceremony, the Sakura ceremony this Sunday at
Okay.
3 at Lake Park, and also coming up on the 13th will be the first municipal band concert of the season at the Lake Park Band Shell under the direction of Myron Haug, and everybody's invited to those two events. Thank you.
Okay, Jerry.
Yes.
Michelle?
Winona this weekend, they're still looking for volunteers. I'm still looking for volunteers, but I don't think you can miss it.
What, it maxed out of what,
900. They got the full 900. That's a lot of people.
Debbie?
Yeah, just a comment again, the Memorial Day program put on at the Veterans Park, again, was spectacular. They very, very nice job. The park, I think, is looking absolutely wonderful. I wish my lawn looked like that, but I grow weeds instead of grass. I try to keep them short. Also, I want to make sure, too, to thank the Board of Adjustments for their work in this issue that was before us as well. We appreciate that. And, again, you did due diligence for what was before you, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, George?
Okay, thanks to the Board of Adjustment, decisions like that are tough, so they're not easy. So I think Jerry said it all, Plus they can all be on TV, too. But seriously. I would just like to acknowledge a co-worker of mine, Scott Stevie. He was presented a certificate from the Winona Fire Department in recognition of his concern and involvement by notification and evacuation of others from a fire this past May, and just simply want to acknowledge him. Good work, Scott, and good job. Well done.
Okay, thank you, George.
Under the consent agenda, there's one item, the approval of the minutes from May 21st.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Moved by Debbie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Michelle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, carried.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Moved by Jerry.
Second.
Michelle, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, what you said.
Okay.